Welcome to Storytales. Please like this video and subscribe to Storytales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Little one, run from these people immediately. Get up in the morning and go to your future mother-in-law's house, and you'll see everything my late grandmother told me in a dream the day before my wedding. And when I drove up to my mother-in-law's house, I froze at what I saw. But before I begin, I ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and enjoy. I woke up to the sound of my alarm and reached for my phone. 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Outside the window, the June sun was shining. The city was already going about its usual business. I got out of bed and walked to the mirror. 30 years old. In 3 weeks, I'd be getting married. It felt strange to realize this. I'd lived alone for so long, gotten used to my independence, to the quiet in my apartment, to not having to answer to anyone. But now everything would change. I'd have a husband, a family, a new life. My name is Vera Koltsova. I've been working as a chief accountant for a construction company for 8 years now. Good salary, stable. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown, inherited from my parents. My father died 6 years ago. A year later, Mom moved to my aunt's place in the countryside and stayed there. She transferred the apartment to me. Real estate downtown is expensive. I understood that and treasured it. All my life, Grandma taught me to be strong, not to depend on men, not to bend, not to tolerate other people's rudeness. Grandma raised 2 children alone, worked 3 jobs, built a house with her own hands. When I was 10, she often repeated, "Trust people, but verify their words with actions. Not everyone is who they claim to be." Grandma died 4 years ago, quietly, in her sleep. I was 26, and I lost the person closest to me. Mom loved me, of course, but Grandma was special. She understood me without words, could sense when I was upset, even if I stayed silent. Sometimes I miss her advice. I went to the kitchen, turned on the kettle, and picked up my phone. 2 messages from Oleg. "Good morning, love. How did you sleep? We'll stop by Mom's this afternoon. She wants to discuss the banquet menu." Oleg Terekov, 37 years old. My fiancé. We met 11 months ago, completely by chance. He came to our company on business, processing some documents for his business. I was sitting in the reception area, checking invoices. He was waiting for the director. We struck up a conversation. Oleg was charming. Tall, fit, dark-haired with some gray, brown eyes, pleasant smile. Well-dressed. Gray suit, white shirt, polished shoes. He spoke confidently, with light humor. He told me he was in the business of supplying industrial equipment. He had his own small business, an office, a warehouse outside the city, several regular clients. After his meeting with the director, he invited me for coffee. I agreed. We spent 2 hours at the cafe, and time flew by. Oleg was an interesting conversationalist, asked questions, listened attentively, joked appropriately. At the end, he asked for my phone number. We started dating. At first once a week, movies, restaurants, walks along the waterfront. Oleg gave me flowers, not every time, but he gave compliments without being syrupy. He acted like an adult man who knew exactly what he wanted. I liked that. After a series of failed relationships in my 20s, I was tired of immature guys who didn't know where they were going. A month and a half into our relationship, Oleg suggested I meet his mother. I was a little nervous. Meeting parents is always a big step. But he reassured me, saying his mom was kind, that she'd like me. Nina Vasilievna Terekova lived in a private house on the outskirts of the city. When we pulled up, I saw a neat single-story house with a green fence, a well-kept garden with apple trees and vegetable beds. Everything was clean and tidy. Nina Vasilievna met us at the gate. A woman of about 60, short, thin, with short gray hair and a penetrating gaze. Dressed simply, dark sweater, black pants. A smile on her lips, but her eyes studied me intently. Inside, it smelled of fresh baking. The table was set. Cabbage pies, salads, compote. Nina Vasilievna seated me in the place of honor and began asking questions. Where do I work? What position? What's my salary? Do I own my home? Are my parents alive? The questions were direct, without ceremony. I answered honestly, accountant, stable salary, my own apartment downtown. Father deceased, mother living in the countryside. Nina Vasilievna nodded, listened, occasionally asked for details. At the end of lunch, she said she liked me, that Oleg needed a serious, hard-working woman, not some airhead, that she'd been dreaming of a daughter-in-law for a long time because her son was her only child and it was time for him to start a family. We left late in the evening. Oleg apologized for his mom's interrogation, said she'd had a hard life. Her husband died young. She raised her son alone, so she's cautious. I understood. Any mother wants to know who her child is connecting their life with. After that visit, we continued dating. Oleg sometimes came to my place. Sometimes I went to his. He was renting a one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts, said he'd sold his own place a year and a half ago, invested the money in expanding his business, and was renting for now until the business paid off. The apartment was modest, a sofa, table, closet, nothing extra. 7 months into our relationship, Oleg started talking about marriage. He said we weren't kids anymore, that it was time to start a family. I wasn't in a hurry, I wanted to get to know him better, but he was persistent, gave gifts, kept saying he loved me, that he wanted to be together for life. I thought about it and agreed. I was 30. All my friends were long married, raising children. I was tired of being alone, and Oleg seemed reliable. He proposed at a restaurant on the waterfront, got down on one knee, pulled out a ring, asked me to be his wife. I said yes. People at neighboring tables applauded. Oleg was happy. Nina Vasilievna was also delighted when we came to her with the news. She hugged me, said now she'd have a daughter, that she'd been waiting for this for a long time. We set the wedding date for June 21st. 3 weeks until the celebration. There's a lot to do. Book a venue, send out invitations by address, prepare documents. I started with the venue. Oleg said there wouldn't be many guests, about 30 from both sides. I found a cozy place downtown, inexpensive but decent. Ordered the banquet, paid a deposit. The manager gave me a list of dishes to choose from, said the final menu needed to be approved a week before the event. Then the dress. I didn't want anything puffy. I chose a simple cream-colored dress knee-length, without lace or sequins. Beige shoes with a small heel. Arranged to order a bouquet from a friend who's a florist, white roses and greenery. We invited few guests. On my side, my friend Sveta, a few work colleagues, my mom's sister from the countryside. 12 people total. From Oleg's side about the same. His mother, a couple of his friends, distant relatives. A modest wedding, without unnecessary fuss. That's exactly what I wanted. Everything was going well, but sometimes little things bothered me. For example, Oleg never invited me to his office. I suggested a couple of times that I stop by his work, see where he spends his days. He refused, said it was messy there, under renovation, uncomfortable to receive visitors. Promised to show me later when everything was in order. Or his phone. Oleg never left it unattended. Always carried it with him. Even when he went to the shower, he took it with him. When I once asked why, he laughed, said he was waiting for an important call from a client, that in his business you can't miss calls. What also alerted me was that he rarely talked about work. To my questions, he answered in general phrases. Things are going well, clients are happy, orders are coming in. But there were no specifics. Who are these clients? What exactly does he supply? Where's this warehouse? To all this, he answered evasively and quickly changed the subject. But I try not to attach importance to it. Everyone has the right to personal space. Maybe he just doesn't like discussing work at home. Many people do that, separate personal life from professional. The kettle boiled. I made tea, sat at the table, and opened my to-do list for today. I needed to go to Nina Vasilievna's, discuss the menu, then stop by the cafe, clarify details, meet Sveta in the evening, try on the dress. The phone vibrated. Message from Oleg. I'll pick you up at 11 o'clock. Mom's waiting for us for lunch. I replied briefly. Okay, I'll be ready. Oleg arrived on time. We drove to Nina Vasilievna's house. On the way, he talked about how happy his mom was about the upcoming wedding, how she'd already bought a new dress, how she was planning to bake pies for the banquet. When we arrived, Nina Vasilievna was already waiting on the porch. She hugged me, let us into the house. The table was set again. We sat down, and she immediately started discussing the menu. So, Vera, what do you think about the appetizers? Should we do more fish or meat? I answered, offer my options. Nina Vasilievna listened, nodded, wrote everything down in a notebook. Oleg mostly stayed silent, occasionally inserting a comment. After lunch, Nina Vasilievna suggested we walk around the garden. We went outside. She showed me her beds, talked about which vegetables she grows, how she takes care of them. I listened politely, though I wasn't particularly interested in gardening. When we returned to the house, Nina Vasilievna suddenly said, Vera, I want to tell you something. Oleg is my only son. I raise him alone. His father died when he was 5. I worked hard to give him an education, help him start his business. He's a good man, but sometimes he makes mistakes. I hope you'll be patient with him. I didn't understand what she was getting at, but I nodded. Of course, Nina Vasilievna. We all make mistakes. She smiled. You're a smart girl. I'm glad Oleg chose you. We left in the evening. On the way back, I asked Oleg what his mother meant when she talked about his mistakes. He waved it off. Oh, that's nothing. She's just worrying. You know how mothers are. I didn't insist, though the conversation left me with an unpleasant aftertaste. That night, I had a strange dream. I was standing in the middle of a room, and around me were people with blurred faces. They reached out to me, trying to grab me, but I kept backing away. And then I heard Grandma's voice, Vera, be careful. Not everything is as it seems. I woke up in a cold sweat. My heart was pounding. I looked at the clock, 3 a.m. I lay there, unable to fall back asleep, thinking about the dream. What did it mean? Was it just a random nightmare? Or was Grandma trying to warn me about something? Morning came. I got ready for work, had breakfast, left the apartment. The whole day, I felt anxious. Couldn't concentrate on work. Colleagues noticed and asked if everything was okay. I said yes, just tired. In the evening, Oleg called and suggested we meet for dinner. I agreed. We met at a restaurant, ordered food, talked. He was cheerful, made jokes, told me about his day. I tried to relax, but couldn't shake the feeling of unease. When we were leaving, Oleg said, Vera, I want to ask you something. After the wedding, where will we live? At your place, or should we look for something else? I was surprised by the question. Well, at my place. It's bigger, in the center. Why rent when I have a 2-bedroom apartment? He nodded. Yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify. We parted ways. I went home, thinking about his question. Why did he ask? It seemed obvious we'd live at my place. Or did he have other plans? The next day was Sunday. I decided to clean the apartment, do laundry, prepare for the upcoming week. While I was cleaning, I found an old photo album. Started leafing through it. Photos of childhood, parents, grandma. I stopped at one photo where Grandma and I were standing in the garden. She was hugging me, smiling. I was about 10 years old. I remember that day. We'd been picking apples, and Grandma had told me, Vera, remember, the most important thing in life is to stay true to yourself. Don't let anyone manipulate you. I sat there, looking at the photo, and tears rolled down my cheeks. I miss Grandma so much. She always knew what to say, how to support me. And now she was gone. The phone rang. It was my mom. Vera, honey, how are you? Fine, Mom. Are you ready for the wedding? Almost. Just a few more details. I'm so happy for you. Oleg seems like a good man. Yes, Mom. But if something happens, if you have any doubts, don't hesitate. Call me. I'm always here. I know, Mom. Thanks. We talked for a few more minutes, then hung up. I sat on the couch, thinking, why did everyone keep warning me? First Grandma in the dream, now Mom. Was there something I wasn't seeing? The next evening, I was at home when my friend Sveta called. Vera, can I come over? I need to talk to you. Of course, come on over. Sveta arrived half an hour later. We sat in the kitchen, and I made tea. She looked serious. Vera, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about it for days, and I can't stay silent. What is it? It's about Oleg. I'm worried about you. Worried? What? Listen, I don't want to upset you right before the wedding, but something doesn't feel right. All these red flags, the office he never shows you, the phone he guards so carefully, the vague answers about his work. It's suspicious. Sveta, a lot of people are private about their work. I know, but there's more. Last week, I was talking to my colleague Marina. She used to work in real estate. I mentioned Oleg's name casually, and her face changed. She said she knew him. So, Vera, she said he was involved in some shady dealings a few years ago. Real estate fraud. She couldn't give me details, said it was all rumors, but she warned me to be careful. I felt my stomach tighten. Real estate fraud? Yes. I'm not saying it's true, but don't you think you should check? Before you marry him. How do I check? Hire a private investigator. Or at least do some digging online. Search his name, look for court records, anything. Sveta, we're getting married in less than 3 weeks. I've already paid for the venue, invited guests. I know, and if I'm wrong, you'll have a beautiful wedding and I'll apologize. But if I'm right, Vera, you could lose everything. Your apartment, your savings, your life. I sat there, processing her words. Part of me wanted to dismiss it all as paranoia. But another part, the part that remembered Grandma's warnings, couldn't ignore it. Okay, I said finally. I'll look into it, but discreetly. I don't want Oleg to know. Good. And if you need help, I'm here. After Sveta left, I sat at my computer and started searching. I typed Oleg Terekov into the search engine. Several profiles came up, but none seemed to be him. I tried adding our city name. Nothing concrete. Then I tried searching court records. The website was complicated, but I managed to navigate it. I entered his name and date of birth. The search came back with one result, a civil case from 3 years ago. I clicked on it. The plaintiff's name was Larissa Sokolova. The case involved property dispute. The details were vague, but it mentioned fraudulent misrepresentation and unjust enrichment. My hands started shaking. Larissa Sokolova. Could this be the Larissa that Sveta's colleague mentioned? I searched for Larissa Sokolova on social media. Found several profiles, but one stood out. A woman in her 30s, living in a town about 100 miles away. Her profile was mostly private, but I could see a few photos. In one, she was standing in front of a small house, looking tired. I sent her a friend request and a message. Hello, my name is Vera. I'm engaged to Oleg Terekov. I found her name in a court case from 3 years ago. Can we talk? It's urgent. I hit send and waited. An hour passed. 2 hours. No response. The next morning, I woke up to a notification. Larissa had accepted my friend request and replied, "Call me. Here's my number." My heart racing, I dialed the number. She answered on the second ring. Vera, yes. Thank you for responding. You're engaged to Oleg Terekov? Yes. We're supposed to get married in 2.5 weeks. Silence. Then don't do it. Cancel the wedding. Run as far as you can from that man. Why? What happened? He ruined my life. Completely ruined it. Can you meet in person? This isn't something I can explain over the phone. When? Today, if you can. I'll drive to meet you halfway. We arranged to meet at a cafe in a small town between our cities. I called in sick to work and drove there. Larissa was already waiting when I arrived. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, thin, dressed in worn jeans and a faded sweater. We sat at a quiet corner table. She ordered coffee but didn't touch it. So, she began, "You want to know about Oleg?" "Yes. Please, tell me everything." She took a deep breath. "I met him 4 years ago. I was working as a teacher, living alone in a small apartment my parents had left me. He appeared in my life like a dream come true. Handsome, charming, successful businessman. We dated for 6 months, and it was wonderful. He proposed, and I said yes without hesitation. What happened after you got married? At first, everything seemed fine. We lived in my apartment. He said his place was being renovated. Then about 2 months after the wedding, he started talking about buying a bigger place. Said he'd found the perfect house, but he needed cash for the down payment. He asked me to sell my apartment and give him the money. Said he'd handle the purchase, that he knew the real estate market better than I did. And you did it. I trusted him. He was my husband. I sold the apartment, gave him the money, about $120,000. He said he'd finalize the purchase within a month. But he didn't. No. A month passed, 2 months. Every time I asked, he had an excuse. The paperwork was delayed, the seller was being difficult, there were legal complications. I started getting suspicious, asked to see documents. He always had a reason why he couldn't show me anything yet. When did you realize you've been scammed? After 3 months. I came home one day, and he was gone. All his things, his clothes, everything. He'd vanished. I tried calling. His phone was disconnected. I went to his mother's house. Nina Vasilievna? Yes. She acted shocked, said she had no idea where he was, that he must have had an emergency. But I could see it in her eyes. She knew. She was part of it. Did you go to the police? Immediately. But they said there wasn't enough evidence. I'd voluntarily sold my apartment and given him the money. He produced some forged documents showing he'd invested it in a business venture that failed. Legally, they couldn't prove fraud. The case went nowhere. What did you do? I moved away, started over. Took a job in another town, rented a tiny room. It took me 2 years to get back on my feet, and I'm still not recovered financially. I lost everything, Vera. My home, my savings, my trust in people. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry for me. Save yourself. If you're engaged to him, he's planning the same thing with you. That's how he operates. He targets women with property, women who live alone. He charms them, marries them, takes their assets, and disappears. But why would Nina Vasilievna help him? Because she's his partner. They do this together. It's a family business. I felt sick. Have there been others? Besides you? I don't know for sure, but I suspect yes. When I was researching him after he left, I found hints of other cases, other women. But most people don't want to talk about being scammed. It's embarrassing. Do you remember any names? There was one woman someone mentioned to me. Ksenia something. I tried to find her, but couldn't. Ksenia. Do you remember a last name? No, sorry. But if you can find her, she might be able to help. We talked for another hour. Larissa gave me all the details she could remember. Dates, places, names of people who might have information. When we parted, she hugged me. Please, Vera, don't make the same mistake I did. Don't trust him. I won't. Thank you for telling me. I drove back to the city in a daze. Everything Larissa said fit with my suspicions. But I needed more proof. I needed to find this Ksenia. That evening, I sat down with my laptop again. I searched for variations of Ksenia and Oleg Terekov. Nothing useful came up. Then I tried searching marriage records. It took hours, but finally I found it. Ksenia Markova, married to Oleg Terekov 3 years ago. Divorced 4 months later. I searched for Ksenia Markova on social media. Found several profiles, but none with photos that matched the approximate age. Then I had an idea. I searched for Ksenia Markova's family members. Among her friends' list, I found a profile labeled as Ksenia's mother. I wrote her a message. Hello, I'm looking for your daughter Ksenia. Could you help me with contact information? The response came an hour later. Who are you? Why do you need my daughter? A friend of mutual acquaintances. I'd like to get in touch. Ksenia doesn't talk to anyone. Leave her alone. Please, it's important. We won't cause any harm. Long silence. Then a phone number appeared. Here's her number. But she doesn't like calls from strangers. I copied the number and called. Long rings, no answer. I tried again. More rings. She wasn't answering. Try later, I told myself. I put the phone on the table. Sveta was with me. Sveta, what do I do? The wedding is in less than 3 weeks. Guests are invited. The venue is paid for. Cancel the wedding. Just like that, based on one woman's words. Based on facts. Oleg hid that he was married before. He doesn't show you his real business. His ex-wife lost her apartment. Another victim disappeared. This isn't a coincidence. But the documents. Nina Vasilievna showed me documents. Documents that could be fake. Vera, are you a lawyer? Can you tell real documents from forged ones? No. Exactly. Listen, let's do this. I know someone, a private detective. He can fully investigate Oleg, find all the information, and then you'll know exactly who you're dealing with. A private detective costs money, not as much as losing your apartment. Vera, this is your life, your property. You need to know the truth. I thought about it. Sveta was right. Better to spend money now than lose everything later. Okay, give me the contact. Sveta called the detective right there with me. His name was Mikhail. His voice was calm, businesslike. Mikhail, my friend needs help. She wants someone investigated before her wedding. Understood. Name: Oleg Terekov, 37 years old. What do you need to find out? Everything. Biography, marriages, divorces, business, debts, criminal record, everything you can find. Timeline. As fast as possible. The wedding is in 2.5 weeks. I'll have it done in a week. Payment after results. How much? Mikhail named a price. It wasn't cheap, but I agreed. Sveta gave him my number. I sent Mikhail Oleg's photo, addresses, all the information I knew. He confirmed receipt. Now all I could do was wait. The next few days were tense. I continued preparing for the wedding, meeting with Oleg, but inside I was gnawed by doubt. Every time he said something about work or the future, I analyzed his words, looking for lies. Oleg didn't seem to notice anything, or pretended not to. We discussed wedding details, chose the cake, coordinated the banquet program. Everything moved forward as planned. After 3 days, I tried calling Ksenia again. This time, someone answered. Hello. A woman's voice, quiet and cautious. Hello. Is this Ksenia? Yes. Who is this? My name is Vera. I'm sorry to bother you. I got your number from your mother. My mother? What? I wanted to talk to you. It's important. About what? About Oleg Terekov. Long, heavy silence. I don't want to talk about that. Please, I really need your help. I'm about to marry him. More silence. Then, don't marry him. Why? He'll ruin your life. Ksenia, can we meet? Talk in person. Pause. Okay, but not in your city. I don't want to risk running into him. Where do you live? In a village about 30 miles from you. I can give you the address. I wrote it down. We agreed to meet the day after tomorrow, on Saturday. I arrived at the village at 10 a.m. A small place, private houses, quiet streets. Ksenia lived in a small house on the outskirts. She met me at the gate. A young woman of about 28, thin, pale. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, dressed in sweatpants and a gray sweater. Come in. We went inside. It was modest. Old furniture, linoleum on the floor, faded curtains on the windows. Ksenia led me to the kitchen, put on the kettle. Sit down. We sat at the table. Ksenia poured hot water into cups, added tea bags. So you've also fallen for his trap? I don't know. I'm trying to find out the truth. Ksenia took a sip of tea. I met him 3 years ago. I was working in a store then, renting a room. Oleg appeared like a savior, helped with money, gave gifts, said beautiful words. After 6 months, he proposed. I agreed. What happened after the wedding? We lived in my room. After a month, he said he'd found a good apartment option, but he needed money. I had a small apartment left to me by my grandmother. I sold it and gave him the money. He promised to buy bigger housing, and he disappeared a week later. His phone didn't answer. He wasn't at his address. I went to his mother. Nina Vasilievna said he'd gone on a business trip. We'll be back soon. I waited a month, then realized. Did you go to the police? Yes, but there was no evidence. I'd voluntarily sold the apartment, voluntarily given him the money. According to the documents, everything was clean. He even forged some receipt showing he'd supposedly returned the money to me. The police couldn't do anything. Where is he now? I don't know. After that incident, I never saw him again. I moved here to my in-laws' place. In-laws? Yes, I remarried to a good man. We live quietly, modestly. So you recovered. Financially, no. Emotionally, I'm trying, but the scar remains. Vera, don't repeat my mistake. This man is dangerous. I wrote down everything she told me and thanked her for her honesty. While I was leaving, Ksenia walked me to the gate. Be careful. If you decide to expose him, I'm ready to testify. Thank you. I returned home with a heavy heart. So Larissa was telling the truth. Oleg really is a con artist. He'd done this at least twice before, and I was supposed to be the third. The next day, Mikhail called. Vera, the information is ready. Can we meet? When? Tonight. At the cafe on Central Square. I'll be there. I arrived at 7 p.m. Mikhail was already sitting at a table by the window. A man of about 50, graying hair, calm face. In front of him lay a folder. I sat down, and he handed me the folder. Here's everything I found. I warn you, it's not a pleasant picture. I opened the folder and started reading. Oleg Terekov, 37 years old. 2 official marriages. First marriage to Ksenia, 3 years ago. Divorce after 4 months. Second marriage to Larissa, 2 years ago. Divorce after 3 months. Both marriages ended after the wives sold their property. Next came a list of debts. Loans from 4 banks totaling over $1 million. Missed payments, collection proceedings. Oleg owed everyone. Then information about his business. The company Techno Service wasn't registered. The sole proprietorship in Tarakov's name was closed a year ago due to debts. Officially, he hasn't worked anywhere for the past 2 years. I flipped through further. Photos of Oleg with different women, young, attractive. Captions, Marina, Tatiana, Natalia. All photos from recent months. These are his new targets. Mikhail nodded. Right now, in parallel with you, he's dating at least 2 other women. One lives in a neighboring city, the other here. Inside me, everything boiled. So I was just one of many. Who are they? Mikhail pulled out another photo. A woman of about 30, tall, blonde. This is Daria. She works as a realtor. She and Oleg have been together for over a year. She helps him find victims. Ow! Through real estate databases, she can see who owns apartments. Oleg chooses single women, meets them, gains their trust. So, this is a professional scheme. Yes, Oleg and Daria work together, possibly with his mother's participation. Nina Vasilievna is also aware. I closed the folder. Everything became clear. I was another victim of a well-oiled scheme. Mikhail, thank you for your work. You're welcome. Vera, my advice, go to the police. With these materials, they can open a case. I'll do that. I left the cafe and got in my car. My hands were shaking. Inside, rage boiled. How dare he? How dare he deceive me? I took out my phone and called Sveta. Sveta, you were right. He's a con artist. I have all the evidence. What are you going to do? Cancel the wedding today. Good. Want you to come over? No, I'll handle it. Thanks. I drove home. On the way, I thought about how to have the conversation with Oleg, what to say, how to explain. At home, I sent him a message. Come over. We need to talk. He replied quickly. I'll be there in an hour. I spent that hour pacing around the apartment. Inside me, emotions raged, fury, hurt, disappointment. But I kept myself together. I wouldn't throw a tantrum. I just tell him everything as it is and ask him to leave. Oleg arrived exactly an hour later, walked into the apartment with a smile. Hi, love. What did you want to discuss? I stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed. Sit down. He sat on the couch, still smiling. Oleg, I know everything. The smile didn't slip from his face. What do you know? About Ksenia, about Larissa, about Daria, about the debts, about the fact that you don't have a business. Silence. He looked at me without blinking. The smile froze. I had you investigated. Hired a detective. He found everything. Oleg stood up. Vera, this is a misunderstanding. Let me explain. No, there's nothing to explain. You're a con artist. You wanted to marry me to take my apartment, just like you did with Ksenia and Larissa. His face changed. The smile disappeared, his eyes turned cold. So you were spying on me. I was protecting myself. You're paranoid. I didn't flinch. Grandma had taught me not to fear male aggression. Get out of my apartment. The wedding is canceled. Oleg stepped toward me. You think it's that simple? I invested time and money in you. You owe me. I don't owe you anything. Leave before I call the police. He grabbed my arm, squeezed hard. You'll regret this. I yanked my arm free. I said leave. Oleg stared at me for several seconds, then abruptly turned and left, slamming the door. I stood in the middle of the room, breathing heavily. It was over. The wedding was canceled. I picked up my phone and started texting guests. Short messages. Wedding canceled due to personal reasons. I apologize. Friends immediately started calling, asking what happened. I answered briefly. Unpleasant circumstances came to light. I'll explain later. Then I called the cafe. The manager was unhappy but promised to refund half the deposit. Done. Now I needed to go to the police. The next day, I went to the station. The duty investigator listened to my story, looked at the documents Mikhail had given me. All right, we'll take your statement, but I warn you, the case will be complicated. Oleg acted legally savvy. Proving fraud will be difficult, but there are witnesses. Ksenia and Larissa are ready to testify. That will help. We'll question them. If they confirm, we'll open a case. I wrote out a statement, listing all the facts I knew. The investigator said he'd contact me in a few days. I returned home exhausted, lay on the couch, and for the first time in many days allowed myself to relax. It was all behind me. I'd saved myself. But 2 days later, something strange happened. In the evening, there was a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole. On the landing stood an unfamiliar woman, about 35, tall, blonde, well-dressed in a black coat and leather gloves. I opened the door on the chain. Yes. Vera Koltsova? Yes. Who are you? The woman smiled. A cold, unpleasant smile. My name is Daria. I think you've heard of me. I recognized her from the photo in the detective's report. Oleg's mistress. What do you want? To talk. May I come in? No. Talk here. Daria shrugged. As you wish. Vera, you made a mistake. Oleg is very upset. He invested a lot in you, and you betrayed him. He's the one who deceived me. Deceived? He loved you, wanted to start a family. He wanted to take my apartment. Daria smirked. And so what now? You think you've won? Vera, you're a naive woman. Oleg won't give up that easily. He knows how to deal with you. And your apartment will become his anyway. Is that a threat? No. A warning. I slammed the door. My heart was pounding. What did she mean? I called the investigator and told him about Daria's visit. He said he'd call her in for questioning. But the next day, something worse happened. I came home from work and found the lock on the front door broken. The door was slightly open. I pushed it and went in. The apartment was trashed. Things scattered everywhere, cabinets open, documents lying on the floor. Someone had been searching for something. I took out my phone and called the police. They arrived in 20 minutes, examined the apartment, filed a report. Nothing was stolen, the officer said. But they were clearly looking for something specific. What were they looking for? I asked. I don't know. Maybe documents. The apartment deeds. They were in a safe in the closet. I checked. The safe was intact, not opened. They hadn't found anything. The safe is intact. So this was intimidation, the officer said. He advised me to change the locks and install an alarm system. I did just that. That same evening, I called a locksmith, changed the locks, ordered an alarm installation. Sveta came to spend the night. Said she wouldn't leave me alone. We sat in the kitchen drinking tea. Vera, they're serious. Oleg and his mother are dangerous. You need to be careful. I know, but I won't back down. Let the police find them. What if they don't? They will. I have evidence. I have witnesses. The next day, the investigator called me in. He said he questioned Ksenia and Larissa. Both confirmed my statements. Now the case would be sent to court. Good. Have you found Oleg? Not yet. He's gone into hiding, but we're looking. And Daria? We questioned her. She denies everything. Says she's just Oleg's acquaintance. Doesn't know anything about his dealings. But I have photos of them together. That's not proof of a crime. For now, we can only charge Oleg. What about his mother? We questioned Nina Vasilievna too. She says she didn't know anything, that her son deceived her too. That's a lie. Possibly, but it's hard to prove. I left the station with a heavy feeling. So Nina Vasilievna and Daria would go unpunished. Another week passed. Oleg still hadn't been found. I continued living my normal life. Work, home, meetings with Sveta, but inside lived a fear. What if he comes back? What if he tries to take revenge? Then one evening, as I was returning from work, I noticed something strange. A car was following me. Black, tinted windows, keeping its distance. I turned right, it turned too. I sped up, so did it. I took out my phone and called Sveta. Sveta, I'm being followed. Where are you? Driving home. There's a car behind me. Won't back off. Drive to the police station. Right now. I turned around and headed to the station. The car continued following me. When I pulled up at the police building, it suddenly veered off and drove away. I went into the station and told the duty officer. He wrote down the license plate number I'd managed to remember and promised to check it. The next day, the investigator called. Vera, the car is registered to Daria. We called her in for questioning. She says she was going about her business. Wasn't following you. That's a lie. She was deliberately following me. Prove it. How do I prove it? Cameras, witnesses. For now, it's your word against hers. I hung up. So they were continuing to pressure me, intimidate me. Sveta advised me to move in with her temporarily. I refused. I won't run from my own home. This is my apartment, my life. but I became more careful. Always looked around, checked for surveillance. Didn't open the door to strangers, kept my phone always at hand. A few more days passed. Life was gradually returning to its normal rhythm. Work, home, occasional meetings with friends. There would be no wedding. Oleg was gone. I was free, but inside remained a tension. I felt this wasn't over yet. Something had to happen. And then one night, I had a strange dream. I was standing in a dark room. In front of me was a door. I opened it and saw a long corridor. At the end of the corridor stood a person. I couldn't see the face, but I felt danger. I woke up in a cold sweat. My heart was beating fast. The clock showed 3 a.m. Outside the window was darkness. I got up, drank some water, tried to calm down. It's just a dream, just nerves. But the next day, something happened that made me remember that dream. In the morning, when I left my building, there was a note on my car. I unfolded it. You think you've won, but the game is just beginning. I looked around. The courtyard was empty. No one. I took the note and drove to the police station. The investigator looked at it, put in a file. Vera, this is intimidation. They're trying to break you. What should I do? Don't give in. Continue living your normal life. We'll find Oleg. Sooner or later, he'll surface. I left the police station with a heavy feeling. Sooner or later, he'll surface. But when? And what will he do? In the evening, Sveta called. Vera, I'm worried about you. Maybe you should really come stay with me for a while. No, Sveta, I won't let them drive me out of my home. But what if they do something? The police are looking for them. They'll find them. And if they don't, they will. I have to believe that. We talked for another hour. Sveta tried to convince me, but I held firm. This was my home. I wouldn't run. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking, what if Oleg really does come back? What if he tries something? I had an alarm system, new locks, but would that be enough? At 3 in the morning, I got up and went to the kitchen. Made tea, sat by the window. Outside, the city slept. Street lights glowed dimly. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. And suddenly I heard Grandma's voice. Not in a dream, clearly, as if she were standing next to me. Vera, don't be afraid. You're stronger than you think. Trust yourself. I looked around. The kitchen was empty, but I felt her presence, her warmth. Grandma, I whispered. No answer. But inside, something settled. The fear receded. I felt calmer. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling, as if something had changed. I couldn't explain it, but I felt more confident. I went to work as usual. The day passed quietly. No strange calls, no suspicious cars. Evening came. I returned home, made dinner, sat down to watch TV. And then the phone rang. It was the investigator. Vera, we found Oleg. He's been arrested. My heart skipped a beat. Where was he? Hiding at a friend's place in another city. We've been watching him for a week. Today we moved in. What happens now? Now there'll be a trial. With all the evidence we have, the testimonies of Ksenia and Larissa, the detective's report, the financial documents, he'll definitely get convicted. How long? Hard to say. But given the number of victims and the amounts involved, he's looking at significant prison time. And his mother? And Daria? We're still working on that. But we have enough to charge them as accomplices. Thank you. Thank you so much. Just doing my job. Vera, you were brave. Not many people would have stood up to them like you did. I hung up and sat there, letting it sink in. Oleg was arrested. The nightmare was over. I called Sveta. Sveta, they got him. Well, thank God. Vera, I'm so relieved. Me too. Want you to come over? We can celebrate. No, not tonight. I just want to be alone, process all of this. Understand. But call if you need anything. I will. Thanks, Sveta, for everything. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. No nightmares, no waking up in cold sweats. Just deep, restful sleep. The next few weeks were a blur. The police continued their investigation. They questioned me multiple times, asking for details, clarifying facts. Ksenia and Larissa came to the city to give additional testimony. I met with both of them. We sat in a cafe, 3 women who'd all been targeted by the same con artist. I'm glad we found each other, Larissa said. For years, I felt so alone, so stupid for falling for his tricks. Me too, Ksenia added. I blamed myself. Thought I should have seen the signs. We all should have, I said. but he was good at what he did. Professional. The important thing, Larissa said, is that we're stopping him now. He won't be able to do this to anyone else. We agreed to stay in touch, to support each other through the trial. The trial itself lasted 3 months. I attended every session, sitting in a gallery, watching Oleg. He looked different, thinner, paler, the charming smile gone. Sometimes he'd glance at me, and I'd see hatred in his eyes. But I didn't look away. I wanted him to know I wasn't afraid anymore. Nina Vasilievna was also on trial. She cried often, claimed she didn't know what her son was doing. But the evidence against her was strong. Financial transactions, text messages, testimony from Daria, who'd eventually agreed to cooperate in exchange for a lighter sentence. In the end, the verdict came. Oleg Terekov, 6 years in prison for fraud and conspiracy. Nina Vasilievna Terekova, 4 years in prison for aiding and abetting fraud. Daria Volkova, 2 years suspended sentence for her cooperation with investigators. When the judge read the verdict, I felt nothing. No joy, no satisfaction, just emptiness. Justice had been served, but it didn't erase what had happened. It didn't give back the months I'd lost, the trust that had been broken. I left the courthouse and walked to my car. Sveta was waiting for me. How are you feeling? I don't know. Empty. That's normal. It'll take time to process everything. I know. We drove to my apartment. Sveta made tea, and we sat in the kitchen, just like we had so many times before. So what now? She asked. What's next for you? I don't know. I just want to go back to my normal life. Work, home, maybe travel a bit. What about dating? Meeting someone new? I shook my head. Not for a long time. Maybe never. I don't think I can trust anyone again. Vera, don't say that. Not all men are like Oleg. I know, but I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be. Life continued. I went back to work. Colleagues asked what had happened. I answered briefly. Personal problems. All resolved. Friends called, invited me to meet up. I declined. I didn't want to see anyone. Sveta came by once a week. We'd sit in the kitchen, drink tea, talk. She tried to lift my spirits, but I remained indifferent to everything. One evening, as I sat by the window watching the street, my mom called. We hadn't spoken in 2 months. Vera, sweetheart, how are you? Fine, Mom. I heard you had some troubles. I did, but it's all resolved now. Come visit me. Rest. Regain your strength. I thought about it. Maybe I really should leave, change the scenery. Okay, Mom. I'll come for a week. I went to the countryside a few days later. Mom met me at the house, hugged me tightly. My daughter, you've gotten so thin. I'm tired, Mom. I know. You'll rest here. The countryside was quiet, peaceful. I walked through the fields, helped Mom with chores, read books. Gradually, I started to feel better. One evening we sat on the porch, drinking tea. Mom looked at me intently. Vera, what's wrong with you? You seem so empty. I don't know, Mom. I'm just tired of people. Not all people are bad. I know, but I don't want to risk it anymore. Mom sighed. Your grandmother always said, life is risk, but without risk there is no life. Grandma, she saved me, Mom. Came to me in a dream, warned me. Mom nodded. She's always been near, and she's near now, protecting you. Tears came on their own. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to cry. Mom hugged me, stroked my head. Cried out, daughter. Cried all out. I cried for a long time. All the accumulated emotions, fears, hurts poured out. When I calmed down, Mom said, life goes on, Vera. You're young, healthy. There's still a lot of good ahead. I don't want to get married. Then don't. Live for yourself. Enjoy each day. I returned to the city a week later. Felt a little better. Not completely healed, but alive. Sveta met me at home. So did you rest? Yes, a little. Good. Come on, I made dinner. We went up to my apartment. Sveta set the table. We ate, talked. She told me about work, about her family. I listened, occasionally commenting. When Sveta left, I was alone. Sat on the couch, stared at the ceiling, thought about life. Oleg was in prison. Nina Vasilievna, with a suspended sentence, stayed home. Daria also behind bars. I was free. I had my apartment, work, health. I'd won. But why did I feel like I'd lost? Because I'd lost faith in people, in love, in happiness. I got up and walked to the window. Below, people hurried about their business, lived their normal lives, fell in love, got married, divorced, fell in love again. And I didn't want it anymore. Didn't want to risk my heart. Didn't want to go through what I'd been through again. I'll get a cat or a dog. Work, save money, take vacations. Alone, calm, safe. But inside, something clenched. Is this what I wanted from life? No. I wanted a family, children, love. But now everything had changed. 6 months later, life had fallen into its usual routine. Work, home, occasional meetings with friends. I bought a cat, named her Marquise. She was ginger, fluffy, affectionate. I wasn't as lonely with her. Sveta sometimes hinted that it was time for me to start dating men again. I brush her off. I don't want to. I'm fine as is. But it was a lie. I wasn't fine. I was just afraid. One day, I ran into Larissa by chance at the store. We chatted. How are you, Larissa? Good. I got remarried to a good man. We live quietly, peacefully. Congratulations. And you, Vera? I'm alone. Alone? What? I don't want to risk it. Larissa looked at me sadly. Vera, not all men are like Oleg. They're good people. I know, but I'm afraid. I understand. I was afraid too. But then I met him and realized that life without love isn't life. Maybe. We said goodbye. I walked home thinking about her words. Life without love isn't life. But I wasn't ready to open up again. A year passed after the trial. I still lived alone. Worked, came home, fed the cat, watched TV shows. On weekends, I cleaned the apartment, went to the store, sometimes met with Sveta. One evening, my mom called. Vera, how are you? Fine, Mom. Daughter, I'm worried about you. You're all alone. That's not right. I'm fine as is. No, you're not fine. I can hear it in your voice. You're unhappy. Mom, I don't want to talk about this. Vera, listen to me. Your grandmother saved you not so you'd shut yourself off from the world. She wanted you to live a full life. I am living. No, you're existing. It's not the same thing. I hung up. Mom was right. I was existing but not living. But what to do? How to learn to trust again? I didn't know the answer. Another 6 months passed. One day at work, my colleague Svetlana approached me. We weren't close, but we sometimes talked. Vera, I have a favor to ask. I'm listening. I have a friend, a good man, works as an architect. Recently divorced, looking for someone to date. Maybe you could meet. I wanted to refuse, but Svetlana looked at me with such hope that I couldn't. Okay, let's try. A week later, we met at a cafe. His name was Andrew, a man in his 40s, tall with kind eyes. We talked for over an hour. He was calm, thoughtful, with a subtle sense of humor. When we were saying goodbye, he asked, maybe we could meet again? Pause. Inside, fear and hope battled. Then I nodded. Okay. We started meeting once a week, then more often. Andrew was patient, didn't rush, didn't pressure. He was just there. Gradually, I started opening up, told him what had happened. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, Vera, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but not all people are like that. Give me a chance to prove it. I looked at him. In his eyes was sincerity. Okay, let's try. Another 6 months passed. Andrew really turned out to be a good man. He didn't demand, didn't manipulate, didn't deceive. He was just there. I started to feel again, to trust, to love. But the fear didn't go away completely. I still checked, analyzed, looked for a catch. Andrew understood, wasn't offended, waited. One evening we were sitting at my place, drinking tea. Andrew looked at me seriously. Vera, I want to ask, are you ready for a serious relationship? I don't know, Andrew. I'm afraid. I understand. But I'm not Oleg. I won't hurt you. How can I know? He took my hand. You don't know, just like I don't know that you won't hurt me. But we can try. Together. I looked at him. Yes, he was right. Life is risk, but without risk, there is no life. Okay, let's try. And for the first time in a long while, I smiled for real. But the ending of my story won't be a fairy tale, because life isn't a fairy tale. Andrew turned out to be a good man, but it didn't work out for us. After a year, we parted peacefully, amicably. We just realized we weren't right for each other. I was alone again, but now I wasn't as scared. I understood that I could cope, that life goes on no matter what. Oleg is serving his sentence. Sometimes I think about him. Not with anger, just think. What is he doing there? What is he thinking about? Nina Vasilievna died 2 years after the trial. Her heart couldn't take it. I felt a little sorry for her, but only a little. Daria was released after 4 years, moved to another city. I haven't heard about her since. Ksenia and Larissa are living their lives. We sometimes message each other. They're happy. Ksenia had a baby, Larissa too. Irina got a good job, is saving for her own apartment. And I'm still alone. I'm 31 years old. I work, live in my apartment. I have a cat. Sometimes I go on dates, but nothing serious. Maybe someday I'll meet the one, or maybe I won't. But it doesn't matter. The main thing is, I'm living, really living. Not afraid, not hiding. Grandma saved me not so I'd just exist. She wanted me to live a full life. And I tried to every day. Sometimes at night, I dream of Grandma. She stands next to my bed and smiles. I wake up with a feeling of peace. She's near, always near, protecting me. And I know everything will be okay, sooner or later. But there won't be a fairy tale. There will be life, real, complex, unpredictable. And I'm ready for it.